The clock was approaching 1 in the morning. I was sitting with a cup of tea in my hand, still shaken by the sight of the body that had arrived earlier. It wasn't something out of the ordinary for me. I've grown accustomed to this line of work and all that comes with it. It's not an easy job, but I've gotten used to it. However, as I started to feel bored, I opened the notebook and began reviewing the cases that had come in today. While reviewing, I noticed someone standing in front of me. I lifted my eyes from the notebook and looked up, and at that moment, the cup of tea fell from my hand. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The person standing in front of me was the same body I had seen just moments ago. Hi everyone, today's story requires your full attention because all its details are interconnected. Most importantly, this story is real. To keep it short, I want everyone watching this story now to pause the screen and hit the like button, because this story carries a lesson, and I hope it reaches as many people as possible so they can learn from it. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Now get ready, set the right atmosphere, and let go of anything that might distract you. Let's begin the story. I woke up to the sound of my wife calling me, saying, get up, Mark. Your work is calling you. Get up, get ready." I said to her, "It's unfair to wake someone up like this. Besides, I'm tired and not going to work today. I'm exhausted." But she insisted, "Get up, man. Stop making excuses. Don't break your commitment." I got up, ate, got ready, and left. I was on my way to the morgue and arrived to take over the shift from Sam, who was handling the first shift. After things calmed down, I sat at the desk and zoned out for a while until the sound of the ambulance sirens snapped me out of it. This meant a body was about to arrive. I went outside to find the paramedic and driver unloading the body of a young woman in her 20s, accompanied by a man who was crying uncontrollably. I tried to help them bring her inside, but the sight of the body frightened me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide open, and blood was dripping from her nose. Despite my fear, I helped them bring the body inside and placed it in the refrigerator after completing the intake procedures. The people left, and the clock was approaching 1 in the morning. I was sitting with a cup of tea in my hand, still shaken by the sight of the body that had arrived earlier. It wasn't something out of the ordinary for me. I've grown accustomed to this line of work and all that comes with it. However, as I started to feel bored, I opened the notebook and began reviewing the cases that had come in today. While reviewing, I noticed someone standing in front of me. I lifted my eyes from the notebook and looked up, and at that moment, the cup of tea fell from my hand. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The person standing in front of me was the same body I had seen just moments ago, now standing on its feet in front of me. I jumped up in shock, and at that moment, my phone rang. I was startled and answered it. It was Dr. Ani, the pathologist. He greeted me and said, "Welcome back, Mark. Get ready because tomorrow you'll be assisting Uncle Naman in washing a body." I tried to speak, but I couldn't. I felt paralyzed and I hung up, still staring at the body standing in front of me. It hadn't moved. I was terrified, even though I've dealt with bodies before and should be used to such things. But this was the first time something like this had happened to me. Suddenly, I heard a muffled scream coming from the body. The scream grew louder, and then I saw someone enter some of the rooms. I turned to the rooms and the body disappeared. I found a man standing in front of me and he said, "Hi, sir. I heard there's an unidentified body here, disfigured. My brother went missing a week ago, and I'm afraid it might be him." I told him, "Sir, I can't show you the body without a representative from the prosecution present. You can't come alone. Have you filed a missing persons report?" He said he had, but no one had found anything yet. He said to me, "Please don't turn me away. Let me see it. I don't want to suffer anymore." I reluctantly agreed, warning him not to take too long. He entered the refrigerator with me, and I opened drawer number 5. He looked at the body. It wasn't his brother, and then thanked me profusely. But at that moment, I heard the muffled scream again, coming from drawer number 10. The man looked at me and asked, "What's that sound? Is someone screaming?" I told him I didn't hear anything, but he insisted. He opened the drawer and screamed, "Lena, it's her!" I asked him if he knew her, but he didn't respond. He just stood there frozen, staring at the body until I pulled him away and closed the drawer. I took him outside, but he tried to leave. I stopped him and said, "You're not going anywhere. You're going to sit here and tell me everything you know about Lena." He finally agreed and began to tell his story. "My name is Adam. I work in real estate. I live next to Mr. Jacob, his wife Sophia, and their daughter Lena. They were good people, and my relationship with them was normal. Just polite greetings. One day my brother, who is still missing, came to me and said he wanted Luna. He loved her and wanted to marry her. At the time, as we knew that Lena was engaged to an engineer, but they broke up and no one knew why. Although I wished my brother could marry someone like Lena, I knew it was unlikely. But he was determined and I couldn't stop him. After that, the whole neighborhood could hear screams coming from their house until we heard that Lena was being suffer. Her ex-fiancé, the engineer, came back to her and things seemed to be going well. But I noticed that Sam was upset that she had gone back to her ex-fiancé. He kept saying, "I'm more deserving of her." I don't know what happened after that, but a week before the wedding, Sam disappeared. I couldn't find him anywhere, so I filed a missing persons report, but no one helped me. Later, I heard that Lena died after the wedding, right after she entered her husband's house. We heard a scream that shook the entire street, and then her husband ran out of the house barefoot, screaming. He couldn't believe what he saw when he entered the room and found her like that. But that's all I know. I asked him, "Do you think your brother had something to do with what happened to Lena? Did he do something to her?" He replied, "No, that's not true. My brother Sam is a simple man. He wouldn't do something like that." I told him, "Based on what you've said, it seems like Sam might have been involved to what happened to Lena." He denied it, but I insisted. Anyone in my position would think the same. Maybe he did something to make her leave her fiancé, and when she went back to him, he decided to take revenge. But I don't know why it led to her death. He said, "That's not true. My brother Sam is a good man. He doesn't think any time to hurt someone. He has nothing to do with such things." I told him, "All right, give me your number, and if any unidentified bodies come in, I'll let you know." He thanked me and left after giving his number. I sat back at the desk and kept thinking about what he had told me. There were clearly many missing details, but my thoughts were interrupted by a sound coming from the morgue. At first it was just a faint sound, but then it grew louder, repeating the words, "Open the door." Since I've been through this before, I ignored it. I looked at the clock. It was almost morning. Time was passing quickly. Then Mr. Henry came in and greeted me. I greeted him back, and he asked if I was ready to help him wash the body. I told him I was ready, and we went to the washing room. As usual, when washing a body, strange things happen. I've seen many strange things that no one would believe, but this time, the body of the man in his 40s was different. His face looked older, not like someone in their 40s. I also noticed a tattoo on his body that looked like a demon. I tried to read it a few times until I found myself saying, "Dingal." Suddenly, the room felt like it was shaking. The lights started flickering, and there were strange noises. Mr. Henry was trembling and saying, "What's happening, Mark? What's going on?" We left the room without finishing the washing. Mr. Henry was sitting on a chair, unable to speak, while I was focused on what was happening. I felt like everything happening to me was connected to Lena and the story Adam had told me. This had never happened before. Mr. Henry asked me, "I heard you saying something before all this happened. What were you saying?" I told him I had read a name that was tattooed on the body. The name was Dingal. He said, "Do you know what that name means?" I said, "Yes, it's one of the sons of Iblis, Satan. He hates humans and loves to kill them. Anyone who resorts to him will have their life destroyed." At that moment, the sound of the ambulance siren interrupted us. I went outside to see the body that had arrived. It was a young man in his 30s. The paramedic told me they had found personal belongings with him, a wallet and a phone. The wallet contained his ID, and his name was Sam. I asked the paramedic again, "What's his name?" He repeated, "Sam." I thanked the paramedic after taking the personal belongings and called the number Adam had given me to inform him of the news. I heard screaming on the other end of the phone, so I hung up, trying to understand what was happening. An hour later, Mr. Adam arrived with an older man. They requested to take the body and bury it, but that wasn't possible because the cause of death wasn't clear. They needed to perform an autopsy. They started arguing in front of the refrigerator, refusing to allow an autopsy. To avoid further trouble, Mr. Henry, who was still there, called the police. They arrived and took the body away. Shortly after, Dr. Leo said, "All right, I'll go in now to perform the autopsy on the body that just arrived. Sorry, Mark, but you'll have to wait with me for a while. As you can see, the family's refusing the autopsy, and I'm afraid they might barge in at any moment." I assured him, "Don't worry, doctor. I'm here, and as long as I'm here, no one will enter the refrigerator." Dr. Leo thanked me and left to examine the body. I went back to Mr. Henry, and we entered the washing room and began preparing the body. After we finished, he said, "I'm going home now. I'm not feeling well. This is the first time I've been so exhausted." I told him to go home and rest, and I'd check on him later. After he left, Dr. Leo came out and said, "I'm done. I'm going to my office to write the report. The prosecution is waiting for it." He left, and I handed over the shift to Jack. I went home, unable to see straight from exhaustion and what I had witnessed. I lay down on the bed and thanked God that my wife was asleep. I couldn't handle much more. I woke up to a phone call from Dr. Leo. He said, "Sorry to wake you, Mark, but I called Mr. Henry and he's not answering. He's supposed to be washing and preparing a body right now." I told him, "All right, doctor, give me the address and I'll go check on him." I took the address from him, got ready and left. It was still early, about an hour before sunrise. I went to the address and knocked several times, but no one answered. I thought he must not be home, but then his friend told me, "Mr. Henry is a heavy sleeper. He came back early in the morning and hasn't left since." I started to panic after several attempts to wake him. The fear inside me turned into a sense that something was wrong. I break down the door. I found Mr. Henry on the floor, dead. His face was frozen in an expression of fear and terror that was indescribable. His friend said that his death didn't look natural, and we called the police. When the police arrived, the officer asked me to come with him to the station to discuss what had happened. I called Dr. Leo and told him everything. He said he would meet me at the station. I went with the officer and told him everything that had happened, from Lena's body to Sam's body. The officer listened but didn't believe a word I was saying. He thought I was making it all up. I sat with the officer until Dr. Leo arrived. What he said was strange. He said the tattoo on the body we had washed and prepared was the name Dingle, and the same tattoo was on Sam's body, who had died of a heart attack. It was likely that Sam had been the one who performed the magic on Lena, but the magic had backfired on him. The officer still refused to believe these assumptions, and since there were no charges against me, I was free to go. Dr. Leo and I left the station and returned to the morgue. The day passed without any issues, but the next day, I found the newspapers talking about the death of Mr. Henry, the washer, and the tattoo of Dingle that had also appeared on his body. They questioned the connection between his death and the demon. I didn't understand how they got this information, but the newspapers mentioned Sam, saying he had practiced magic and sorcery. The whole neighborhood where Sam had lived was cursing him, and everyone was convinced that Sam was the one who had killed Lena. But then something happened that changed everything. A man named Daniel came forward with shocking information. The officer called me to hear Daniel's testimony. Daniel said, "I am a friend of Sam, and I am deeply disturbed by the recent news. The truth is, this whole situation is not what it seems. I knew that Sam loved Lena, and he did everything he could to get her attention. He was happy when he found out she had left her fiancé, David, because he was cheating on her. But after she left him, Lena seemed possessed. Sam saw David in suspicious area. Sam followed him and saw him going to a house in our neighborhood. The house belonged to a man named Paul, a charlatan who practiced magic and sorcery. Sam asked to stay with me for a couple of days, and when he found out about the house and its connection to sorcery, he was convinced that David had cast a spell on Lena. He decided to confront them when David and his relative arrived. From that day on, Sam disappeared and never returned. The officer summoned David and his relative, Robert, for questioning. David denied everything, but Robert confessed immediately. He admitted that David had cast a love spell on Lena after they broke up. The charlatan, Paul, had summoned the Jinn Dingle to Lena, and the Jinn Dingle refused to leave her. She returned to Daniel, and they went back to Paul, who said that Dingle, one of the kings of the Jinn, was difficult to expel. At the end of the conversation, Robert said they would try again the next day, But when they returned, Paul was dying in front of their eyes, begging for help. They were too scared and ran away. That's what happened. The officer asked, "Then how did Sam die?" "People found him dead in the alley, and the autopsy confirmed he died of a heart attack." Robert replied, "He must have seen something at Paul's house or in the cemetery." I responded to the officer, "With all due respect, based on Daniel's testimony, Sam went to confront them but never returned. He must have seen something at Paul's place. But what drove him to the alley has no explanation." The officer said, "Now you're becoming part of the events, Mark." I apologized, saying I didn't mean to interfere in his work. The interrogation ended, and the officer charged David and Robert with practicing sorcery. The court wouldn't accept that the Jinn Dingal had killed Lena, Paul, and Sam, all of whom had died of heart attacks with no evidence to prove otherwise.